My name is Margaret Lewis, 71 years old, retired nurse, widow of Dr. Henry Lewis, and the woman everyone used to call the Heart of St. Jude S. Now they call me the face of the Lewis Wellness Foundation. It sounds flattering until you learn I never founded it. The first time I realized something was wrong was at brunch. My daughter-in-law, Vanessa, lifted her mimosa and said to her friends, "We built this foundation for seniors like Mom here. It gives them dignity." Then she smiled at me, tight, polished, merciless. I just nodded. I'd been nodding for years. Vanessa married my son Daniel 10 years ago. She was dazzling, public relations, fundraising, expensive handbags that always matched her lipstick. When Henry passed, she said, "We'll help you stay busy, Mom. We're launching a foundation in your name." I thought it was kind. I even baked cookies for their launch event. Soon I started seeing my name on glossy brochures. Margaret's Promise, a foundation for senior care, my face on posters, my voice in commercials I'd never recorded. They even printed my signature at the bottom of donor letters. At first, I told myself it was just marketing. Then I saw Vanessa on TV saying, "My late father-in-law was a man of vision. My husband and I continue his legacy by raising private donations." But I knew Henry had left a medical trust, funds for our local hospital's equipment, not for parties and champagne fundraisers. When I asked Daniel about it, he said, "Mom, don't worry about numbers, you've done enough." Enough, that word stuck to my ribs like old medicine. Last December, they invited me to a winter gala, my honorary night. I bought a modest dress, blue with silver buttons, the same one I wore at my 50th wedding anniversary. I arrived early. Reporters asked me to smile for photos under a banner that read, "Empowering the elderly, one donation at a time." Vanessa glided past me in sequins, kissed my cheek like it was policy, and whispered, "Smile wide, Mom. The donors love authenticity." Then, under chandeliers and cameras, she took the stage. "This foundation," she said, "was built to help seniors who can't help themselves, like my dear mother-in-law, our living inspiration." People clapped, someone laughed softly, and when Vanessa added, "She reminds us why charity exists," the applause turned into a roar. Everyone toasted. I sat still. The truth landed heavy. They weren't honoring me. They were using me as a prop, a pity project, a soft focus face that made their greed look generous. That was the night I stopped nodding, because when you spend your life saving others and your own family turns your dignity into a marketing slogan, you don't stay quiet, you audit. And I had spent 40 years keeping ledgers. 2 days after the gala, I drove to their downtown office, marble lobby, glass walls, a receptionist who called me Mrs. Lewis, the legend. She didn't know the joke was on me. Vanessa was in her corner office, heels off, sipping an $8 green juice while signing checks. "Mom, did you see the photos? You look so radiant," she chirped. I placed a printed brochure on her desk, my photo, my signature. Underneath, "All proceeds managed by the Lewis Family Trust." "Did you ask before you used my name and signature?" I said. She blinked. "Oh, that? Our legal team handled it." "You're the brand, Mom. We're just the executors." "Executors of what?" "Of legacy," she said, voice honey thick. "Look, people donate because they feel something. You make them feel safe. I make them open their wallets. That's partnership." "That's exploitation." Vanessa laughed softly. "Oh, Mom, don't ruin the mood. You should thank us. The foundation gave you purpose again." I looked at her for a long second. "I had purpose long before you printed my face." Her smile vanished. "Then why did you agree to come to the gala?" "Because I thought you believed in what you said." She set down her pen. "I believe in results, and you, dear, are very photogenic for 71. That's when Daniel walked in, his tie half loosened, eyes tired. "Mom, don't start. Vanessa's doing good work." "Good work with whose money?" I asked. "Henry's trust? The one meant for St. Jude S?" Vanessa's tone hardened. "We reallocated unused funds. The hospital board approved it." "I was on that board," I said. "I'd know if they had." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Mom, we're modernizing. Foundations need flexibility. Donors expect events, PR, optics." "You mean champagne?" "Mom, no. I said, standing. You don't get to call this legacy. You're stealing from your father's name. Vanessa rose, eyes glinting. Careful, Margaret. You sound ungrateful. I stepped closer. And you sound rehearsed. Her voice dropped. Don't forget, this foundation carries your name. If it falls, you fall with it. I looked her dead in the eye. Then let's see who hits the ground first. A week later, I received a letter from the bank. At the top, notification of fund activity, Lewis Family Trust. Every month, $25,000 withdrawn under event expenditure. Another line, beneficiary account, Vanessa T. Lewis Holdings. I called Daniel. No answer. Texted him. Need to talk about Dad's trust. He replied 2 hours later. Mom, stop worrying. Everything's transparent. Transparent like tinted glass. That night, I went through Henry's old files in the cedar chest. The trust clause was clear. Funds designated for medical equipment, hospice care, and educational scholarships only. Not a word about galas, PR firms, or imported champagne. I printed the bank statement, clipped it to the trust document, and drove to Daniel's house the next morning. Vanessa answered the door in a silk robe, coffee in hand. Oh, Mom, drop by notice next time, okay? We're prepping for the spring fundraiser. I held up the envelope. You're funding it with hospital money. Her smile never reached her eyes. Everything's legal. You wouldn't understand accounting. I laughed once, bitter. I kept your father's books for 30 years. Daniel appeared behind her, expression guarded. Mom, we've discussed this. No, you've avoided it. He sighed. You're making this ugly. Vanessa and I are helping people. With what's not yours, I shouted. Do you even know how many patients could have been treated with that money? Vanessa crossed her arms. Please don't raise your voice. Ethan's in the den. He can hear you. So let him, I said. Let him hear how his parents built a career off deceit. Daniel looked at me like I was a stranger. You need rest, Mom. Maybe take a trip. We'll handle the paperwork. I felt my pulse climb. You mean you'll handle erasing me? Vanessa's voice turned smooth again. Mom, you've had a good run. You deserve to relax. We'll make sure you're taken care of. Taken care of, the same phrase I'd used for dying patients. I turned and left without another word, but inside, something flipped, like a page I'd been too afraid to turn. They thought I was fragile. They mistook my silence for surrender. That night, I poured a cup of tea, opened Henry's ledger, and wrote one line in red ink. Audit begins tomorrow. 2 weeks passed before I saw them again on TV. Vanessa stood behind a silver podium at the annual gala, cameras flashing. Daniel clapped beside her. This year, she said brightly, our foundation raised $1 million to uplift forgotten seniors. Let's honor the woman who inspired it all, Margaret Lewis. Spotlights found me at my table. The crowd applauded. My name echoed in a room full of people who didn't know they were applauding theft. I forced a smile, my heart pounding. Then Vanessa added, she reminds us why giving is so important. Without people like her, there would be no cause. The audience laughed politely. She turned the knife. And that's why we promise, no senior under our care will ever feel like a burden again. The word burden hit me like ice water. I left before dessert. Outside, the cold bit at my hands as I waited for my cab. Behind me, through the glass doors, I saw them posing for photos, my son's arm around her waist, both smiling like saints. When I got home, I opened my refrigerator. Half a pot of soup, 1 apple, a note from Daniel taped to the door. Mom, autopay covers your utilities. Please don't worry. That was when I sat down and cried, not because of hunger or loneliness, but because I'd spent my life teaching my son compassion, and he'd learned calculation instead. On the counter lay the Gala invitation, gold-trimmed, embossed with my initials. I flipped it over and wrote in black marker, You called me your cause. Now I'll be your consequence. Then I picked up my phone and called the only person I trusted, Clara Briggs, my old hospital accountant. Clara, I said, voice shaking, I need help tracing a fraud. Her tone was dry as ever. Who's the patient? My family. Silence. Then, I'll bring the ledgers. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the dark kitchen window. For the first time in years, the woman looking back didn't seem small. She looked like someone who'd finally remembered what she was good at, balancing accounts. Clara came over at 7 a.m., the same way she had walked into my husband's ICU years ago. Purpose first, coat second. She set her laptop on my table and said, "We don't need permission to find the truth." I laid out the papers like surgical instruments, bank statements, donor lists, copies of Henry's trust, screenshots from the foundation site. Clara moved with quiet precision, building a grid in a spreadsheet. Date, source account, destination account, memo line, person who approved it. "Look here," she said, tapping a cell. "A vendor named VNT Consulting receives payments the same day your son's wife posts new gala photos. Who is VNT?" "Vanessa Taylor," I said. "Her maiden name." "Of course it is." By noon, we had a trail clean enough for a classroom, Trust Foundation, VNT, Vanessa's personal account, luxury vendor payments. Every hop had a memo line pretending to be equipment or outreach. None of it reached a patient. We needed a witness. I called Ethan, the sound technician who always shook my hand like respect still existed. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Lewis?" "Ethan, I need you to copy every raw audio file from the spring fundraiser. The offstage chatter, the mic tests, all of it." He was quiet a moment. "If I do that, I probably can't work with them again. If you do this, people I've cared for my entire life get what they were promised." "I'll bring it tonight," he said. After dark, we met at Clara's house, curtains closed, kettle whistling. Ethan slid a small drive across the table. I labeled the tracks by time code, play track 6. Vanessa's voice filled the room. "Put the champagne under equipment appreciation." "No one reads line items." A second voice, Daniel's, muttered, "Mom won't understand any of this anyway." Clara hit pause and looked at me. "We pair that with bank movements. We have corroboration." "Not just corroboration," I said. "Narrative. People don't change until they hear themselves." We built a packet for donors, a simple 3-page brief, no flourishes, just numbers. Clara insisted on one extra step. "We'll get a notary to stamp every page. When this hits inboxes, no one can say it's internet gossip." I made one call to St. Jude's administration. "Check your procurement logs," I told the director. "You'll find purchase orders that never became equipment." An hour later, he called back, voice tight. "We show donations promised by the foundation, then retracted the week payments were due. We've been waiting months." "Not anymore," I said. Ethan mapped the ballroom's soundboard. "If you wear a discreet lav mic, I can route your audio to the main speakers even if they try to cut you off. They'll mute the podium channel. They won't mute the master." Clara printed seating charts and circled donor names in red. "When you speak, this row will be filming. That row runs the hospital board. This cluster are corporate sponsors. If they walk, Vanessa's finished." I thought of Henry, signing a check with the careful patience of a man who knew exactly what it would buy. "When I speak," I said, "I'm not asking for applause. I'm returning what belongs to the sick." That night, I ironed a navy dress and pinned Henry's old watch to my wrist. I practiced the speech in the bathroom mirror, cutting every soft word that dulled the blade. At the bottom of my notes, I wrote one line I wouldn't read aloud. "I am not your brand. I am the bill you didn't pay." The ballroom glittered like the inside of a jewelry box. Vanessa sparkled in sequins the color of a storm. Daniel hovered behind her, shaking hands, saying the words he thought donors wanted to hear. I took my seat near the aisle, Clara at my left, Ethan a ghost at the AV booth. The host warmed up the room with practiced gratitude. A string quartet hummed. Waiters poured champagne. Vanessa stepped to the podium and the room tilted toward her like a sunflower. "We gather," she said, "to honor seniors who carried us and now deserve to be carried." Polite applause. Her eyes slid to me. They always did when she needed credibility. Then came the clever part. She invited a patient to speak, a soft-voiced woman who thanked the foundation for a walker she said changed her life. My cheeks burned. Henry's trust used to buy a row of walkers without a fundraiser. Vanessa squeezed the patient's shoulder for the cameras and promised a wing of new equipment. Soon, soon. When the host called my name, our matriarch, Mrs. Margaret Lewis, I stood with the same calm I'd used to tell families their loved one would make it through the night. Vanessa handed me the mic. The polished smile of a woman who believed she owned every room. "Thank you," I said. "I'll be brief." I wasn't. In the last year, this foundation raised $1.2 million. 48,000 reached patients. The rest paid for photography, champagne, PR retainers, and a consulting firm called VNT. Those initials match my daughter-in-law's maiden name. The room shifted. Vanessa lifted her palm as if she could halt physics. "Mom," I went on, "here are the bank transfers. Here are the dates. Here is the trust language my husband drafted, which says equipment and scholarships only. And here." I looked up at Ethan, who nodded. "Is what you said when you thought the microphones were off." A hiss of feedback kissed the ceiling. Then the house speakers filled with Vanessa's voice. "She's harmless. She'll never find out." Laughter from someone off mic. Daniel, low and tired. "Move the invoices. She hates PDFs." Every donor heard it. So did the hospital board chair. So did the patient who had just thanked them. She stared at the stage as though it had switched places with a cliff. Daniel stepped forward, hands out. "Mom, please, we can talk after." "We will," I said. "We'll talk to investigators." The board chair stood. "Is the hospital mentioned in those transfers?" "Yes," I said, "in the promises column." Murmurs turned to voices, voices to questions. Someone called for the lights. Someone else yelled for the CFO. The host whispered into his headset, looking for a script that no longer existed. Clara hit send on a pre-written email to every donor, our 3-page brief, notarized, attached to a link with audio files and a simple line. "We thought you'd want to see this before you donate again." Vanessa lunged for the mic. Ethan flicked the master feed. She spoke, but only the front row heard. For the first time since she built the foundation, the room didn't belong to her. I set the papers on the podium, lined up square. "Charity isn't a stage, it's a ledger. Tonight we balance it." I walked down the stairs, past Daniel, his eyes gray with something like recognition, and through a hush so complete I could hear the rain tap the windows. At the door, I turned once. "Return the money, all of it, to St. Jude heiress, then apologize to the people whose suffering you marketed?" No one stopped me. Truth had already taken the mic. Part 7, The Reveal plus Escalation plus Turning Point. By morning, the video had 1 million views and a name, Grandma Auditor. It wasn't the name I would have chosen, but it did what names ought to do. It placed the credit where it belonged. The foundation froze its website for maintenance. Donors posted screenshots of our brief. The hospital released a statement thanking a longtime volunteer for protecting the intent of a medical trust. A federal address I didn't recognize left a voicemail requesting the packets Clara had prepared. She had already overnighted 3 binders. Daniel called. I let it ring. He texted, "Please, coffee, just us." Against Clara's advice, I agreed, because sometimes the only way to keep a son is to stop letting him hide inside the word. We met at the old diner on Maple. He looked younger without the suit, and infinitely smaller. "I didn't know the numbers," he said. "You signed reports." I skimmed. "That's what thieves count on." He flinched. "She said the trust allowed administrative costs. She said Dad would understand optics. Your father understood invoices with serial numbers, not champagne with a hashtag." He stared at the table. "What happens to us?" "You tell the truth. All of it. To investigators, to donors, to your son when he's old enough to ask why the papers say his parents lied." The waitress poured coffee. He didn't touch it. "I'm sorry, Mom." "The apology isn't mine," I said. "It belongs to the patients who waited for machines that never arrived." He nodded, eyes wet. "I'll cooperate." "You'll testify." He swallowed. "Yes." When I stepped outside, a woman about my age was waiting on the sidewalk. "Are you Margaret? My sister sent me your video. My son moved my retirement into his app and told me it was safer. It's gone." "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be," she said. "I went to the bank this morning. I used your sentence, the one about ledgers." She smiled. They listened. The turning point wasn't the viral clip or even the freeze order that arrived 2 days later. It was the quiet wave of older women who began bringing folders to places where people had only ever brought stories. Women who realized proof could be a kind of love. When the assistant U.S. attorney called to say charges were being filed, I sat in Henry's chair and closed my eyes. "We'll need you on the stand," she said. "I know how to tell the truth," I said. "I did it for 40 years. It never changes under cross-examination." The trial was brisk. Clara's spreadsheets walked the jury line to line. Ethan's raw files gave the numbers a voice, and the voice gave the numbers a face. The trust language projected on a screen was so plain the judge read part of it aloud. Equipment, hospice, scholarships. No room for sequins in those syllables. Vanessa pled to 3 counts: embezzlement, wire fraud, exploitation. The courtroom was colder than the ballroom and far more honest. Daniel testified. His answers cost him a marriage but returned him a spine. Before sentencing, the judge invited me to speak. I stood with my notes folded in my hand and didn't look at them. "I won't ask for mercy or punishment," I said. "My husband taught me that math doesn't hate you. It just refuses to lie for you. Tonight is a correction, not a spectacle. Return what belongs to the sick. Then do the hours it takes to understand why you thought their pain was optional." The judge sentenced Vanessa to restitution, probation, and community service at the senior center, 800 hours, 1 for each 1,000 diverted. It wasn't a cage, it was a ledger. Outside, microphones waited. "Do you forgive her?" a reporter asked. "I forgive myself for nodding too long," I said. "As for her, when the books are clear, I'll reconsider." Weeks later, the hospital invited me to a quiet ceremony. No cameras, just staff, 2 new dialysis machines humming in a room that had waited too long. A plaque on the wall read, "In memory of Dr. Henry Lewis, proof with compassion." I ran my fingers over the letters until the chill left my hands. Daniel showed up at my porch one evening with a flat of rose bushes. He was clumsy with the shovel, as if the ground owed him something and had refused to pay. We planted side by side, saying little. When the light thinned, he said, "Ethan asked if he could intern with the hospital techs. He wants to fix sound for people who can't hear." "That sounds like a start," I said. He glanced at the door. "May I come in?" "Not tonight," I said gently. "Soon." After he left, I brewed tea and opened Henry's ledger. One blank page remained. I wrote, "Recovered, trust, name, use, restored, machines, dignity, boundaries, outstanding, none." I closed the book and set it beside the kettle. The house held its breath, then exhaled the way rooms do when they remember the right people live there. In bed, I thought of the women who had stopped me in grocery lines with folded envelopes and questions they were finally ready to ask. I thought of the men who had learned the hard arithmetic of apology. I thought of Henry's steady hand on the paper and his steadier hand on my shoulder, both telling me the same thing: keep the line straight. If you've listened this far, thank you. Tell me in the comments what you would have done if your name became someone else's costume. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories Women 65 Plus USA, because stories like mine and yours deserve to be heard.